The first rule of the life I had meticulously built was that nothing was a gift. Everything was earned. I had earned the corner office on the 23rd floor in downtown Nashville, the one with the panoramic view of the Cumberland River snaking through the city. I'd earned the subtle nod of respect from my colleagues at Velmark Automation, a respect built not on charm, but on a foundation of 70-hour work weeks and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Most importantly, through a decade of drive-through dinners, repaired rental property toilets, and saying no to trips with friends, I had earned the salt-scrubbed air and the rhythmic lullaby of the Atlantic at my small, gray-shingled house in Wilmington, North Carolina, my sanctuary. That's why, when the call came on a Tuesday afternoon, it felt less like an inconvenience and more like a tectonic shift, a violation of the fundamental laws of my universe. "We're moving in on Friday," my brother, Leo, announced over the speakerphone. His voice was so breezy, so utterly devoid of question. He might as well have been informing me of a change in the weather. Mom already agreed. I was at my expansive oak desk, the scent of leather and success a constant, comforting presence. I had been finalizing a quarterly marketing report, the neat columns of data a testament to order and control. Now, the numbers blurred into meaningless squiggles. I set down my pen, its faint scratching sound suddenly deafening in the heavy silence that followed his declaration. "Moving in, where?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, a tactic I'd learned in tough negotiations. "What exactly are you talking about, Leo?" "Your beach house, obviously," he scoffed, a familiar note of impatience in his voice, as if I were a particularly slow child. "Mom said you barely use it anyway, and Chloe and I need a place while we hunt for something permanent. She already gave us the security code." A cold, heavy dread, thick as mud, pooled in the pit of my stomach. My beach house, the one I had closed on just 8 months ago. The one whose mortgage payment was a monstrous monthly reminder of my ambition. The place where I went to untangle the knots in my mind, where the only demands on my time were the rise and fall of the tide and the turning of a page. "Leo, let me be crystal clear," I said, my knuckles turning white as I gripped the polished edge of my desk. My voice was low, each word a carefully placed stone. "Nobody consulted me about this. That house is mine. I own it. My name and my name alone is on the deed." He laughed. It wasn't a warm, shared laugh. It was the dismissive, patronizing sound he'd perfected since childhood, the sonic equivalent of a condescending pat on the head. "Come on, Ava. Don't be like that. It's just for a little while. Mom said you'd understand. Family helps family, right? It's what we do." "This isn't help, Leo," I bit back, the control in my voice beginning to fray. "This is a hostile takeover." "Wow. You really are dramatic, you know that?" I hung up. I didn't slam the phone. That would have been a loss of control. I ended the call with a deliberate final press of my finger, a small act of severance. My hands were trembling, not with fear, but with a pure, unadulterated rage that felt like it could shatter the floor to ceiling glass of my office. I swiveled in my ergonomic chair and immediately opened the security app on my laptop. 3 months prior, after a minor string of break-ins rattled the quiet Wilmington neighborhood, I'd invested in a top-of-the-line system that cost more than my first car. High-definition cameras covering every angle, motion sensors, glass break detectors, a direct line to the local police department. It was my name on the account, my money paying the substantial monthly fee. My name is Ava, and at 29, my life was a fortress I had built brick by painful, painstaking brick. While Leo, my senior by 4 years, drifted from one failed venture to another day trading, a line of artisanal hot sauces, a disastrous stint as a club promoter always cushioned by our mother's seemingly bottomless bailout fund. I took the slow, arduous, unglamorous path. I'd bought my first tiny rental property with a down payment that represented every dollar I hadn't spent on necessities for 5 brutal years. I learned about property management, about tax law, about how to snake a drain at 2 a.m. because a tenant's kid had flushed a toy soldier. The beach house wasn't just another asset. It was the culmination. It was the symbol that I had finally, truly arrived. It was mine. My phone buzzed, a venomous little vibration on the desk. The caller ID flashed. "Mom." I took a deep breath, bracing for the second wave of the assault. "Ava, honey, Leo just called me. He is so distraught. He said you were terribly rude to him," she began, her voice a masterclass in wounded maternal sorrow. "I simply cannot understand why you are making this into such an ordeal. He is your brother. He and that lovely girl Chloe are in a terrible bind. He's in a bind of his own making, I said, my voice tight as a wire. And you do not get to offer up my house like it's a spare bedroom in your home. You had absolutely no right. Don't you dare take that tone with me, young lady, she snapped, the victim act evaporating in a flash of temper. There it is, the selfishness. I see it more and more in you every year. You have so much, Ava. This fancy job, all these properties. Your brother is struggling. His landlord is selling the building. It is the least you can do. You're hardly ever there anyway, rattling around in that big Nashville apartment all by yourself. That is not the point. I was almost shouting now, the sound echoing in my quiet office. The point is the profound lack of respect. The point is that I was not asked. Did it occur to either of you that I might have plans? That I might want to use my own house? That I am a person, not a resource? Respect is earned, Ava, and frankly, your attitude is appalling, she said coldly. I was just trying to be a good mother to both my children. I already gave him the code. They have already rented the U-Haul and hired movers. The decent thing to do now is to stop this tantrum and welcome your family. I took another deep, steadying breath, the kind my therapist, Dr. Miller, had taught me for moments just like this. Recognize the pattern, Ava. Do not engage with the script. The answer is no, Mom. He cannot move in. Well, it's too late for that, she said, with an air of absolute finality. They'll be there Friday afternoon, try to be gracious. It would be a nice change. She hung up. This was their playbook, refined over decades, a two-pronged attack. Leo's entitled boundary, ignoring demands, and my mother's subsequent emotional manipulation and guilt-tripping. When I was 16, she'd convinced me to lend the $3,000 I'd saved from my waitressing job to pay off Leo's car loan. He'll pay you back with interest as soon as he's on his feet, she had promised, her eyes welling with tears. He was 21. I never saw a single cent. When I graduated from college, summa cum laude, she'd tried to guilt me into co-signing a lease for his tech startup office space. I refused, and the resulting 2-month silent treatment was my punishment, a lesson in the price of saying no. But this was different. This wasn't a few $1,000s or a signature on a lease. This was my home, my sanctuary. I stared at the security app, its clean, modern dashboard glowing on my screen. This time I would not yield. With a series of decisive clicks, I changed the master code, the duress code, and deleted all temporary access codes. Then, I dug deeper into the settings menu, a place reserved for emergencies, and enabled the trespass protocol. It was an extreme option, one the installer had called the last resort. If an incorrect code was entered 3 times, not only would the ear-splitting alarm sound and the police be dispatched, but the system would also activate a powerful external loudspeaker. A calm, authoritative, pre-recorded male voice would announce to the entire neighborhood. Warning, you are trespassing on private property. Your image has been recorded. The authorities have been notified and are en route. My phone buzzed. A text from Leo. What the hell, Ava? The new code Mom gave me doesn't work either. Stop playing games. I didn't text back. He called immediately, his icon a smirking selfie from 3 years ago. Why would you do that? He demanded, forgoing any greeting. His voice was tight with suppressed fury. We are halfway through packing. We have a U-Haul full of our stuff. For God's sake. Then you should turn around and unpack, I said, my voice a flat, emotionless wall I had carefully constructed. I told you no. I meant it. There is no version of this where you move into my house. Mom said. Mom doesn't own the house, Leo, I interrupted, my voice dangerously soft. Her opinion on this matter is completely and utterly irrelevant. There was a long, charged silence. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. The petulance was gone, replaced by something colder, something venomous that slithered through the phone. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? Sitting up there in your fancy office, looking down on everyone. You always have. Well, we're coming anyway. We'll figure it out when we get there. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. We're coming anyway. The sheer, unmitigated gall was breathtaking. They genuinely believed they could simply show up and I would crumble, as I had so many times before, conditioned by years of training to be the good daughter, the responsible one. But the girl who lent her life savings to her feckless brother was gone. In her place was a woman who owned multiple properties and understood the meaning of the words liability and legal precedent. My coworker Janet knocked softly on my open office door. Hey, you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost. I managed a weak, unconvincing smile. Family stuff. Ah, she said with the quiet wisdom of someone who also navigated the treacherous waters of a complicated family. Say no more. I'm making a coffee run. You want the usual quad-shot latte? Please, I said, my voice barely a whisper, and make it a large. The next 36 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. A relentless barrage of texts and voicemails from unknown numbers, which I knew were my mother using her friend's phone so I couldn't block her. They were a curated collection of her greatest hits: guilt, shame, and accusation. You are tearing this family apart. Your father, God rest his soul, would be so ashamed of you. What happened to the sweet, generous girl I raised? Then came the flying monkey's relatives I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly deputized by my mother to deliver the family message. My Aunt Caroline, my mother's sister, called. Honey, I know you're upset, but your mother is beside herself. Her heart is broken. Leo is her son. She's just trying to protect him. Protect him from what, Aunt Caroline? I asked, my patience worn to a single frayed thread. The consequences of his own poor planning? The reality that he's a 33-year-old man who can't manage his own life? The most unnerving call came late Thursday afternoon. An unknown number from a Wilmington area code. I almost ignored it, but a strange premonition made me answer. Is this Ava? A hesitant, shaky voice asked. Yes. Who is this? It's Chloe, Leo's girlfriend. Her voice was strained, almost a whisper, as if she were afraid of being overheard. Please don't hang up. I had to call you. I didn't know he hadn't asked you first. I swear on my life. He told me you'd offered the house weeks ago, that you were just so happy to help us out. I listened, my anger at her softening into something closer to pity. She was just the latest casualty in his long history of collateral damage. He just kept saying you were being difficult and dramatic, she continued, her voice cracking with emotion. But then last night he let it slip that you'd threatened to call the police, and I knew something was really, really wrong. Ava, I am so sorry. I told him this is insane, that we should just get a motel for a few weeks, but he won't listen. He's telling everyone that you're selfish and vindictive, and your mom is backing him up, telling him not to let his mean sister bully him. They're still planning to show up tomorrow. If they show up, I said, my voice as hard and cold as marble, the police will be called automatically. There is a professional monitored security system with trespassing alerts. A sharp, frightened intake of breath on the other end. Oh my God. Seriously? Okay. I don't know what to do. He's not going to back down. He sees this as a challenge now, a matter of pride. She paused, and her next words sent a chill down my spine. Be careful, Ava. He's been drinking since yesterday. When he gets like this, he's not rational. He feels like you're trying to humiliate him, and he won't let that happen. The call ended, leaving me with a new, colder, more specific fear. This wasn't just about entitlement anymore. This was about a man with a fragile, inflated ego who had been publicly crossed, fueled by alcohol and a lifetime of unchecked enablement. Friday morning dawned gray and oppressive, the Nashville sky weeping a fine, drizzling rain. I called in sick, unable to imagine focusing on ad campaigns while my life was imploding. I sat on my couch, my laptop open to the grid of security camera feeds, a silent sentinel watching over my empty, peaceful house 3 states away. At 11:17 a.m., my digital fortress was breached. Motion detected. Driveway. My heart leaped into my throat. On the high-definition screen, Leo's beat-up Ford F-150, towing a rust-streaked U-Haul trailer, rumbled into view. He wasn't alone. My mother sat stiffly in the passenger seat, a look of grim determination on her face. Chloe followed behind them in her own small Hyundai, looking utterly miserable. 2 of Leo's loutish friends I vaguely recognized from a disastrous Christmas dinner were crammed in the truck with him. Unauthorized entry attempt. Front door. I watched, a voyeur to my own home invasion, as Leo confidently strode to the front door and punched in a code. The keypad flashed an angry red. He looked back at my mother, who shrugged with theatrical helplessness. He tried again. Red. He tried a 3rd time, jabbing the buttons with frustrated force. Alarm triggered. Authorities notified. The piercing electronic shriek of the siren began, a sound designed to inflict pain. A second later, the booming, automated male voice filled the air, echoing across the quiet, respectable street. On the camera, I could see them all flinch, my mother physically covering her ears. Leo let out a roar of frustration and kicked the front tire of his truck. Chloe looked like she wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole. My phone rang, the screen flashing with Leo's name. "Turn it off," he screamed, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "Turn this damn thing off right now. Ava, are you insane? You're trespassing, Leo. I warned you. This is the consequence. Mom gave us permission. This is harassment. Mom's permission isn't worth the air it's spoken on." I yelled back, the professional calm I'd maintained for days finally shattering. "Her name isn't on the deed." I watched, my breath held, as my mother, her face a terrifying mask of purple rage, marched to the front door and began hammering on it with her fists, screaming my name. Then came the moment that would be seared into my memory forever. Leo scanned the manicured landscaping, his eyes landing on a heavy, decorative river rock nestled in the mulch. He picked it up. He weighed it in his hand, his gaze fixed on the large, expensive, hurricane-proof picture window beside the door. For one long, terrifying second, I was sure he was going to throw it. "Leo, don't you dare," I said, my voice dropping back into that icy, deadly calm. "If you break that window, it is no longer just trespassing. It is breaking and entering. That is a felony, and I swear to you, I will press charges to the fullest extent of the law. You will go to jail." He froze, the rock held aloft, his arm tensed. From down the street, the faint but unmistakable two-tone wail of approaching sirens grew rapidly louder. He dropped the rock. The fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a sullen, childish defiance. The next hour was a slow-motion car crash, viewed through 4 different camera angles. I watched as 2 Wilmington police officers, a man and a woman, arrived, their expressions professionally impassive. I watched my mother immediately launch into a dramatic, tearful tirade, pointing at the house, at Leo, at the U-Haul, playing the part of the aggrieved matriarch whose mentally unstable daughter had gone off the deep end. My phone rang. It was an unknown Wilmington number. "Ma'am, this is Officer Davidson with the Wilmington Police Department. I am at your property on Ocean View Drive. Can you verify that you are the owner and that these individuals do not have permission to be here?" I took a breath and laid out the entire story, my voice steady and professional, a CEO delivering a report. I offered to email him a copy of the deed, the string of threatening text messages, the call logs showing my repeated refusals. He listened patiently, interjecting only with brief, clarifying questions. "Understood, ma'am," he said finally. "The individuals here are claiming they had implied permission from your mother, who they state acts as your family representative. Ma'am, I need to know your intent. Do you wish to press charges for trespassing?" The world seemed to stop. This was the precipice, the point of no return. If I said yes, the fragile, dysfunctional tapestry of my family would be irrevocably torn. I would be the villain, the one who chose property over blood, a story that would be told for generations. But if I said no, I would be signing up for a lifetime of this. I would be their doormat, their emergency fund, their eternal safety net forever. "Yes," I said, the word feeling both tiny and monumental. "Yes, I want to press charges." I watched on the camera as Officer Davidson relayed my decision. My mother's jaw dropped in genuine theatrical shock. Leo began yelling, finally spotting the discreet camera under the eaves and pointing at it, shouting my name and a string of obscenities. My mother, in a final, desperate act of emotional blackmail, walked right up to the camera, her face contorted with a fury that was almost biblical. Ava, her voice, captured with perfect clarity by the microphone, was venomous. "If you do this, you are dead to me. Do you hear me? You are not my daughter anymore." The words, meant to be a fatal blow, landed with a dull thud. All I felt was a profound, soul-deep weariness. The officers, unmoved by the drama, issued citations for trespassing to Leo and my mother. His 2 friends, realizing they were now party to a criminal complaint, mumbled apologies and quickly vanished. Chloe, crying softly, got in her car and drove away without a word. The entire group, under the watchful eyes of the police, began the long, humiliating process of reloading their possessions back into the U-Haul. The aftermath was a digital hurricane. Leo's social media post was a masterwork of manipulative prose, painting him as the hard-working son just trying to get on his feet, and me as the cold, heartless, wealthy sister who'd called the cops on her own family for simply needing a place to stay. The comments were a public stoning. Family should always come first. She always thought she was better than everyone else. I can't believe Ava would do this. Her father would be rolling in his grave. Oh, a week later, I received a thick envelope via certified mail. It was from a law firm. My mother was suing me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming $75,000 in damages. This was her endgame. If she couldn't have my house, she would try to take my money through the courts. My lawyer, Patricia Hayes, a brilliant, no-nonsense woman with a reputation for being a shark, actually laughed when she read the complaint. This is a textbook slap suit, AITA, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's a bullying tactic designed to silence and intimidate you into submission through financial pressure. She has no case, but it will cost money to fight. We fight, I said, without a moment's hesitation, and we countersue for legal fees and malicious prosecution. The next move in their campaign was even more insidious. An anonymous complaint was filed with my company's HR department, alleging I was misusing company time and resources for my personal legal battles. It was a clear, vicious attempt to get me fired, to destroy the very foundation of the life I had built. My boss, a man who valued results over drama, called me into his office. I laid out the entire sordid situation, providing him with a timeline and copies of the police report and the lawsuit. He listened, his expression growing grimmer by the second. The complaint was summarily dismissed, but the message was clear. They weren't just attacking my property anymore. They were attacking my livelihood. The true turning point came not from a lawyer, but from a Facebook message from a woman named Dorothy. "I am Leo's ex-girlfriend from 5 years ago," it read. "I saw what's happening in your family circles and I had to reach out. He did the exact same thing to me. He and your mother bullied their way into my apartment, and it took me 3 months and thousands of dollars in legal fees to get them out. He also stole my grandmother's jewelry when he finally left. Please stay strong. You are not crazy." We spoke on the phone for 2 hours. Her story was a horrifying carbon copy of mine, down to the exact phrases my mother used for manipulation. She also told me something that made my blood run cold. During their final argument, when she had finally told him to get out for good, Leo had punched a hole clean through her drywall. My mother had rushed over and convinced her not to call the police, weeping about how it would ruin his life. Armed with this new, terrifying information, I filed for a restraining order against both Leo and my mother. The day before the hearing, Leo showed up unannounced at my Nashville office building. The lobby security guard, a large, kindly man named Tom, stopped him, but I went down to face him, my phone recording audio from my pocket. He tried everything in his arsenal: veiled threats, desperate pleading, and a sudden, shocking performance of a sobbing, remorseful brother. It was all there on tape, the rapid, chilling shift between his different masks. The courtroom felt like a stage set for the final act of a terrible family drama. My mother came dressed for a funeral, dabbing at her perpetually dry eyes with a lace-trimmed tissue. Leo sat sullenly beside her, his ill-fitting suit doing nothing to hide the rage simmering just beneath the surface. They lied, of course. Under oath, they wove a narrative of a mentally unstable daughter, prone to fits of pique, who had given them permission and then cruelly rescinded it. But I had receipts. Patricia, my lawyer, was magnificent. She methodically dismantled their story. She played the security footage of the attempted break-in. She presented the endless string of threatening text messages. She read Dorothy's notarized, damning statement into the court record. And for her grand finale, she played the audio of Leo threatening me in my office lobby. The courtroom was silent, the only sound his voice, dripping with alternating menace and fake sorrow. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who had clearly seen every form of human depravity, listened to it all without a flicker of expression. When it was over, she looked at my mother and brother, her gaze as cold and sharp as a shard of glass. "I am granting the petitioner's request for a restraining order for a period of 2 years, she declared, her voice ringing with an authority that left no room for argument. Furthermore, the civil suit for defamation is dismissed with prejudice, as it is clearly frivolous, malicious, and an abuse of the court system. The petitioner is free to seek full restitution for her legal fees." She then turned her gaze directly to Leo. "And as for you, sir, the recording of your statements constitutes a credible threat under Tennessee law. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for a review of potential criminal charges." The gavel fell like a guillotine, severing the last ties that bound me to them. In the end, Leo pled guilty to misdemeanor criminal harassment to avoid a more serious charge. He received 6 months of probation, a hefty fine, and was court-ordered to attend a year of anger management classes. My mother, facing a countersuit she would certainly lose, quietly paid my $12,000 legal bill through her lawyer. The restraining order was a wall of silence. For 2 years there was peace. No calls, no texts, no drama. In that blessed silence, I rebuilt. I was promoted to senior director at work. I reconnected with my cousin Mia, the only one who had dared to defend me. I went to therapy and learned to deconstruct the architecture of my family's dysfunction. I learned that what they called love was actually control, and what they called selfishness was actually self-preservation. 18 months into my court-ordered peace, I sold the beach house. It no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a battlefield haunted by ghosts. I used the profits to buy a small, secluded cabin nestled deep in the Smoky Mountains. A place with no history, no tainted memories. It was there, surrounded by ancient trees and a profound quiet, that I finally, truly healed. The restraining order eventually expired. I live with the knowledge that they could, one day, attempt to re-enter my life. But the woman they would find now is not the one they knew. She has built a new fortress, not of brick and mortar, but of boundaries as strong and unyielding as steel. She has learned that the only sanctuary that truly matters is the peace you build within yourself. A sacred place no one can invade, a place that is, finally and forever, hers alone.